Well, hello there, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Karen Antara, and this is my May energy report for what I'm sensing intuitively and experiencing personally of what's going on the planet right now. And this is May 2026. And I really wondered actually where to start with this energy report because, to be perfectly honest, I'm only just recovered from getting absolutely energetically slammed over the last week of April and into this first few days of May. And I didn't want to make it all about me, but then I kind of realized that maybe it's useful to you if I share a little bit of this information because you might be experiencing something similar and not really understanding what's going on. So, the energies for Ascension have been coming through very, very strongly, and they can actually really impact us on a very physical level as well. So now I'm brutally honest about my thoughts and feelings around some of the stuff that goes on in New Age circles. And so I step with caution into this whole discussion of what Ascension symptoms actually are. Now, I have actually seen in real life many, many times that some of these so-called Ascension symptoms are not even real. They are actually imagined. But today, I want to talk to you about what we call Ascension flu. Because for the most part, that is true, real, providing, of course, the person is not a complete hypochondriac or drama queen, because those do exist as well, let's be honest. But anyway, let me try and be serious now. What is Ascension flu? Well, it is a list of symptoms that we would commonly experience with the common flu, right? So headaches, body ache, joint pain, exhaustion, fever, some dizziness, nausea, joint pain, all of that kind of thing, right? But the question then is, are we actually sick? Well, personally, I believe that we get sick or develop an illness, let's say, when we have emotional or energetic blocks in the body that stagnate and block the energy flow throughout the body, thereby causing the illness. And of course, that excludes illnesses that are caused by, toxicity and poisons and environmental pollution, medication, drugs, alcohol consumption, foods that are unhealthy. That kind of external stuff obviously is going to affect the physical body. But excluding that, if we are ill or have health problems, there is always an emotional, psychological, spiritual, energetic reason for it, all of which can be cleared and healed through the power of our consciousness, by the way. And this is not through wishful thinking, but this is through actually doing the work to clear the problem at a root level. So how is Ascension flu connected? Well, think about what Ascension is. It is a raising of frequency of the body, and it is an expansion of our consciousness. So if we look at the David Hawkins map of consciousness, we will see that negative thoughts are below 200 on his scale. And those negative thoughts, they hold a low consciousness, a low frequency. So below 200, we would be looking at feelings, emotions, thoughts, that are very negative. And the longer that we hold those in place in our body, the more we're blocking the energy flow. Potentially, then that leads to manifesting an illness or a disease pattern in the body. And the longer that you are in this negative place, the more likely it is that you kind of descend a downward spiral of negativity. So these may begin with the highest level, which is still below 200, is pride. A pride in a sense of not being proud of what you've accomplished, but proud in a sense of scorn, over another person in a sense. So then there's anger and hate and desire. Desire not in desiring a beautiful life, but in a desperate craving to have. That type of emotion is quite different. And then we have things like fear and anxiety and regret and despair and guilt, apathy, shame, humility and blame, blaming other people for where you are in life, shame and humiliation. So these are the emotions, feelings that are below 200 on David Hawkins' map of consciousness. And those are the ones that we consider to be negative. So, in order to move up the scale towards enlightenment, or at least towards experiencing peace and joy and love and harmony in your life, we must release those feelings that are below the 200 line, right? That are the negative feelings. We have to release those in our body in order to lift up or ascend that scale of consciousness. Now, if we live a reasonably happy life and we have, good relationships and, a comfortable, nice life, let's say, it can be really hard then to realize or believe that you have any dark or heavy or negative emotions stuck in your body, because you look around and you go, well, no, I'm happy with my life and I experience joy and I feel reasonably peaceful as well. But the truth is that most of us do have these heavier negative emotions still somewhere locked in our body. We're not all pure and enlightened yet, are we? So most of us do have these things. And that's why our shadow work or our inner work is so important, to find these thoughts and feelings, limiting beliefs, to bring them up into the light, to be healed and to be cleared from the body. So at this time of ascension, we are clearing as much as we possibly can of the heaviness from our body. And so along comes a series of solar flares and plasma waves that are all designed to assist us with our awakening and ascension. I mean, I think you'll agree with me that someone who is in a very kind of victim state, into those very heavy, poor me emotions, you wouldn't look at somebody like that and say, well, they are in an expanded state of consciousness, would you? But as that releases, they have this kind of awakening process. So awakening is not all suddenly, oh, now I'm psychic. It's awakening levels of consciousness that help you reframe and initially to begin to experience a better life, really, is ultimately where we want to be. So these solar flares and plasma waves that are coming onto the planet, we've talked about being in an ascension cycle for many years, and there are ancient traditions and wisdoms that talk about moving into the golden age and all of this. So it's all part and parcel with that. But these plasma waves, solar flares that are released, that come onto the planet, they hold a very, very high frequency. And so as they come through and onto the planet, they have the ability to dislodge any of the lower frequency energies that we are holding in our field, and also in the planet. So think about it this way. As higher frequencies enter a dense energy block, we could say, including the cells of our body, it creates a kind of alchemical response. And so, it creates a kind of vibration where it shakes loose cellular debris from the cells, obviously, from these different parts of the body, as well as kind of shaking loose our emotional debris. So as these lower, more dense energies are dislodged from our physical body, from our energy field as well, because there's emotion in there too, as it's released from the physical body, so we begin to go through a clearing process. It's like a detoxification process. That's when we begin to experience these flu-like symptoms. So we are not sick then. When you look at it in that way, we are actually clearing something. So at these times, when there's solar flares coming through, it can also be triggered somewhat by new moons and full moons and things like that, because all of that affects, the magnetic field. So at these times, we might become aware of old emotions coming up. We might feel a sense of anxiety or anger or sadness or a feeling of loneliness, Whatever blocked emotion that you have in your body could come up to be cleared at times like these. Now, equally, you might clear mucus from the body, bacteria, viruses that have just been hanging around but have never triggered off, or that were partially cleared and then kind of buried back in and suppressed again. They hold a low frequency. So they, when they get a blast of high frequency coming in from a solar flare, for example, they begin to shift and move out of the body. And so we might get, mucus or diarrhea or vomiting and these kind of symptoms as this stuff releases from the body, because those dense energy blocks, bacterias, in the cells have been agitated, excited in a sense, and lifted off to be cleared from the body. So these Ascension symptoms usually get you in your weak spot. So it could be pain in a certain area, a particular type of migraine. For a lot of people, particularly this time around, they've been experiencing vertigo, so dizziness, like labyrinthitis, where if you move too fast, the whole room spins, or when you lay down, the room spins, that kind of thing. This seems to have affected a lot of people this particular time around. So wherever, in a sense, is your weak spot in your body, the solar flares, that kind of frequency activity might always get you there. Mine always starts in a particular part of my neck, and I get a particular type of headache that I don't get any other time that there's a solar flare going on. Now, just to be clear, I'm not creating these with my mind. I actually don't follow the Schumann resonance charts or anything like that. But when I get this particular feeling, I always go, I think there must have been a solar flare. Sure enough, within a few days, it will be landing on my Facebook feed. Someone's talking about it. So it kind of validates that for me, but I don't actually follow it or go checking. But what I do know, though, over the last 10 days, I'm recording this on the 7th of May. Over the last 10 days, there have been a number of solar flares. Several of them have been X-class flares, which are very strong. And so I'm not really in any surprise that I've been so energetically smashed in recent times. Now, will you be affected every single time there's a solar flare? No, you won't. And this is where we have to trust our body's innate intelligence. When you're ready to release something and shift your frequency up a little, then these kind of symptoms might come through to be cleared, to be activated. So does it mean then that if you are affected by these very often, that it's because you have a lot of emotional blocks and stuff to clear? Not necessarily. Again, this is about your body's innate intelligence and where you are personally in your ascension process. So some people get fast-tracked for a little while and then they get slowed down again so that they can integrate it. The integration part is very important with our ascension process. So others will do this slower, step by step, slow and steady, so that they take a step, they integrate. They take a step, they integrate. As I say, others might get really blasted and then it slows down while they integrate that before the next one. We all do this differently, individually. As I said, it's all about your personal process. It's not a competition, it's not a race, and you shouldn't be gauging yourself by anybody else. Some people have been doing this for a lot longer, don't forget. Some people are more awake, they're further ahead in their personal ascension journey. Some people are right at the beginning, just beginning to wake up, just beginning to work on themselves and clearing that emotional stuff. Some have big contracts. Maybe they're healers, maybe they're clearing. Some people even clear planetary grids and are affected by those grids for some reasons. Some people have more trauma to clear. Some people actually go back and forth a little bit. They clear something, and just when they think they're getting ahead, it's almost like, it's not almost like, it definitely is like, they can't hold that frequency in their daily life and they kind of drop back a bit. So then they have to do it again. It's almost like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, that kind of experience for some people. It's very personal, very individual, and it's not always the same. We can go through it in this way for a little while and then things will change and we handle it a different way at various stages. Now, if you go to a doctor with your symptoms, he or she will tell you that you've got a virus. It's flu, you're sick, you should go home and rest. And yes, you should go home and rest. That's if you go to the doctor in the first place. This is a time to nurture yourself, to rest, and really to be present with what you're experiencing. I found for myself when these things hit me that I often have a lot of emotional stuff coming up. This most recent one really almost felt like a life review in time at certain times, because I was having these flashback memories from really old stuff. It didn't feel particularly disturbing, but I could see that, so that would have affected me at some point. And it came up quite easily and released easily for the most part. So, it can be quite varied at the emotional responses that you get. That's why it's important to be present with yourself. Take the time off of work, away from social stuff, and just be present to what your body is experiencing. Are you sick? Well, it depends on how you want to view it. Let me talk about ascension symptoms from a little bit of a perspective of some of the New Age spiritual groups. Now, I've had many years of experience of being, in New Age circles and around people that like that stuff, spiritual groups and stuff. And I can say that I have personally seen a lot of people ignore real symptoms. And they've labelled them as just being part of the ascension process. In time, these proved to be very serious symptoms that really should have been looked at and addressed, definitely not ignored. Some of them led to, needing antibiotics or steroids or surgery, that kind of thing. And those were the good outcomes. So please don't ignore real symptoms that are going on in your body and say, it'll pass. It's just ascension symptoms, because yes, it may be, but it may not be. And so that's true to some degree, because actually everything is part of our evolving experience. But please, if you are unwell, please use your common sense and get your symptoms assessed by somebody who knows what they're looking at. Get some medical assistance, if you need to. Don't ignore things and label them as, it's just Ascension, it's fine. If something is not working properly with your body, get some assistance. A great naturopath, acupuncturist, traditional Chinese medicine, whatever floats your boat, but go to somebody who is real and grounded and really knows what they're looking at in the body. Now, we know that doctors love to hand out medications left, right, and centre. And this is where your personal responsibility comes in. So get assistance if you need it, and then participate in your own healing process. Inside my sanctuary space this week, I actually taught a class on why people don't heal. And there are a number of ways in which we block our own healing process. One of them would also be to give our power away to somebody else to make us better. Now, whether that's a healer or a doctor, we must take responsibility for our own healing. Because if something is not fully addressed in the body, or if it is suppressed with some of the types of medication that is handed out, it's not cleared. Like, the symptom may go away, but sometimes it just suppresses and kind of digs in a little bit deeper, right? And sure as eggs are eggs, if you don't address all of it fully and completely, it will come back up again at a later date, and it may be even more, bigger and more aggravated. And there are levels to this as well. So we can only clear something to the level or depth at which we are able to allow ourselves to go at that particular time. I do think there is a place for medication, surgery, and all of that kind of thing if we need it. But, we have to take responsibility for the energetic, emotional, and psychological components of these things as well. And that's what I mean by full and complete healing. If you just take a tablet and make it go away, something's going to come back because there was a root cause to that wasn't looked at and addressed. So we're really looking at this from several different angles. And the physical body can be healed at the level of the physical body, but if the other levels are not addressed, it will still express itself in a different way later because it's still trying to be healed and cleared from the body. That is just the natural process. So this is the kind of work that we do in my sanctuary space, by the way. If you want to know more, then let me know, reach out to me, and we can talk about it. So I'm not saying that my sanctuary space is for sick people to come in. I'm not a doctor. I'm not qualified with that. But what we look at is the emotional, psychological, spiritual components of it, and we try to clear that so that we never have to manifest the physical illness. That means that we have to go deeper. We have to be prepared to look at what is the root cause of all of that. So going forwards into May and beyond, I see actually that there will be a lot more of this solar flare activity coming onto the planet, just because this is our time of ascension. And so by the same token, the more that this light frequency comes onto the planet, so we will see more of this darkness coming up to be cleared. So, with these ascension frequencies around us, more of our emotional stuff is going to be coming up. People that, have been happy to just, keep the peace and keep their mouth shut and people please, things like that. If that comes from a trauma that's been suppressed, at this time and going forward with the frequencies where everything is beginning to raise in frequency higher, anyone holding those heavier, dense frequencies, to be honest, I think they're going to start to become really uncomfortable. They won't be able to keep it suppressed and buried anymore. The thoughts, the feelings are going to come up. It's going to be challenging for people that are not prepared to look at themselves and do some work. And so just like dark and heavy emotions are clearing from our bodies at this time, so too are these dark and heavy things beginning to clear from the planet. I don't necessarily mean the physical planet itself. I'm talking about more disclosure of these dark, debauched, and really emotionally disturbing things that have been going on here for a long, long time. That is going to be coming up to be seen. So there's kind of going to be more disclosure of that, really ick stuff. The Epstein files was just the beginning, really. It was like a taste tester. There's so much more to come because it can't hide in the light that is coming onto the planet now. It is a dark shadow being exposed, just like our dark shadows begin to be exposed as we begin to do that inner work. Government cover-ups, celebrities being exposed, the trafficking, the abuse, the lies, the deception. It's all being exposed now. The darkness has always been there. It's just that we're seeing it more now. And it's coming up to clear, just like our Ascension flu does with our emotions and the darker parts of ourselves. So really, it's the micro and the macro. And we're just watching all of this play out in real time. And there's so much more to come. So hold on to your hats because it's going to become even wilder out there. And in actual fact, just today on my Facebook feed, I see all these reports of the hantavirus. Well, clearly they're trying to create the next pandemic, aren't they? It's exactly the same script that they used for COVID. It starts on a cruise ship. How it got to Australia is that it was on a cruise ship. People got off and spread it all around, apparently. Well, this hantavirus is on a cruise ship and they want to dock in the Canary Islands, and Canary Islands are saying, no, you can't come in. But it's basically the same script, isn't it? Because some people have got off the cruise ship and now it's being spread in these other locations. The hantavirus. Don't fall for this. You've seen it all before. It's the same script. They want our energy, our consciousness to get really sucked into it, to build it, because consciousness is the creator, the builder. So if we all put our consciousness into it, it builds. And if we're in fear of it, then we're in a really low vibrational state. You've seen it all before, folks. Don't fall for it this time. You know better. You know better. So let's not engage with that at all. It's so predictable the way they roll out these scripts. And I would say that this is part of the awakening. More and more people are seeing this. The other thing that's been on my Facebook feed in the last couple of days is all of our local MPs going to get their flu jabs. It's like, oh my goodness, here we are again. The interesting thing this time around, what's that, 6 years later, is that so many of the comments are just saying, clear off, I'm not having anything to do with this, it's ridiculous, and all of that. There are still people defending the system, of course. There probably always will be. Those are not our people, by the way. Our people are the ones that are waking up, that are standing up, that are calling things out, that are demanding the truth. That is a shift of consciousness. It's expansion of consciousness. It doesn't all have to be that we go all woo and see spiritual things. Awakening of consciousness is moving above that 200 marker on David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, because anything below that, fear, anger, pride, all the things I listed earlier, they're below 200 and they're not in truth. They're moving into lies and deception, in a sense, not our natural state. So anything from 200 and above moves into truth, and that's where we are. That is awakening, the expansion of consciousness, and that is our aim, and that's what we're here to do. So I hope something that I said today has interested you or resonated with you. If you want to hear more from me, I'm going to do it. Like, subscribe, and share this video with someone that you think would be interested in it. Of course, you can find me on Facebook. I also write on Substack, and in my email list, I write a little bit of extra for my email subscribers that I don't share anywhere else. So if you want to hear a little bit more from me, reach out via the usual channels, Facebook, here on YouTube, where else? On my website, karenantara.org. And if you would like to know more about what we do in our sanctuary space, I'll put a link below, but reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you about that. Okie doke, I will be back at some point when I feel the flow of communication opening, when I have something that I want to share. And I hope you have a great few weeks until I see you again. Much love to you. Bye.